All right, welcome to another deep dive with us.
Yeah, great to be back.
Today we are looking at a UNESCO publication from 2024.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Guiding Teachers on AI Use and Misuse in Education. Subtitle, AI Competency Framework for Teachers.
Wow.
Got a lot of requests for this one, so I'm excited to dig in. And I think you are too.
I am. This is really the cutting edge, right? This is where it's all happening. We're seeing such a huge impact of AI across all sectors, but education is particularly intriguing because, like UNESCO puts it, since wars begin in the minds of men and women, it is in the minds of men and women that the defenses of peace must be constructed. I mean, I know it's from their constitution, but it's incredibly relevant. It really highlights how important education is, right? Especially now as these technologies that are changing the world are becoming so prevalent. And this publication in particular is all about getting teachers ready for AI in education. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this deep dive.
You and me both. I mean, obviously we read this thing.
Yeah.
But I really want to, distill it down for the listeners.
Right.
And I guess our mission, if you will,
I love it.
is to understand UNESCO's framework here. Like, how are they saying teachers should be equipped? What skills, knowledge, and mindsets do they need to really navigate AI in education while keeping, the human at the center?
Yeah, all about that human-centered approach. So where should we begin?
Well, the report starts by really emphasizing just how urgent it is that we address this.
Yeah, makes sense. It's not exactly a slow-moving train, is it?
No. I mean, AI is already transforming education as we speak.
Absolutely. And it's not just, students using AI tools. It's really changing the very nature of how teaching and learning happen. It's impacting the dynamic between the teacher and the student. They call it a teacher-AI student dynamic.
Teacher-AI student. That's interesting. I like that. It's like a triangle now. It used to be just the two.
Exactly. It's this new kind of trio.
And AI is able to, look, we all know this, right? Process information, generate content, make predictions. And that has huge implications for how we personalize learning, how we assess students, all of that.
Oh, yeah. It's a whole new world of possibilities.
But here's the thing, and this is what really, I think, struck me. In 2022, only 7 countries worldwide had developed, dedicated AI frameworks or programs for teachers.
7? That's a shockingly low number.
Right. I mean, for a technology that's moving this fast.
Well, it shows you the scale of the challenge.
Yeah.
And the urgency, right. Like, this is why UNESCO's framework is so timely. It's meant to fill this gap, to give countries a foundation for moving forward.
Right, a starting point.
Exactly. And it's very much in line with UNESCO's overall approach, which is all about a human-centered vision of AI in education. They want to make sure these skills are developed alongside a strong awareness of human rights, accountability, all of that. It's not just about the tech skill.
No, it's about, as you said, keeping the human at the center.
Precisely. And, it's interesting. They connect this back to their 2021 report, Reimagining Our Futures Together, which was this big call for a new social contract for education in this era of change. So this is very much building on that.
Right. And this isn't their first foray into this world. They've got a history here.
Exactly. They built on their earlier work, like the ICT Competency Framework for Teachers. That was more about, digital literacy in general.
Mm-hmm.
This is really the next step, focusing specifically on the unique challenges and opportunities of AI.
Right. And it's worth noting, this framework was not developed in a vacuum. It was a very collaborative process. They worked with member states, international experts, a lot of consultations.
Yeah, very inclusive. And they actually developed it alongside a framework for students. So they're meant to work together.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not just about equipping the teachers. It's also about equipping the students to be in this world.
Exactly. They're meant to go hand in hand.
Okay, so we've got this pressing need. We've got this globally developed framework.
Yeah.
What are the core principles that guide this framework? Like, what are they really trying to achieve here?
Well, first and foremost, they're really focused on inclusive digital futures, making sure everyone has equitable access to AI in education. The idea is that AI shouldn't exacerbate existing divides.
Right. That's a really important point.
Yeah, no one should be left behind.
Yeah.
And then second, they're all about a human-centered approach, meaning ethical and practical considerations should guide everything we do with AI in education. They actually reference UNESCO's own recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence, which they put out in 2022. And a lot of the guidelines in that report are woven into this framework as well.
So even with this powerful technology, people and their well-being come first.
Exactly. And another key principle is empowering teachers, making sure that AI tools support teachers, not replace them. Teachers should always be the ones making the pedagogical decisions, not algorithms.
That's reassuring.
Yeah, the teacher is still in control. And it's not just about avoiding harm, it's about actively promoting inclusivity. Teachers need to be aware of potential biases that might be baked into algorithms, and they need to work to ensure that AI benefits all students,
Right. All students.
including those from marginalized groups.
And they also emphasize the user's right to question.
Oh yeah, explainability. That's a big one. AI shouldn't be a black box. We need to be able to understand how it's arriving at its decisions, especially when those decisions are impacting students.
I mean, how can you trust something if you don't know how it works?
Right, and that kind of leads into the next principle, which is all about understanding and monitoring the impact of AI,
Right.
being aware of the intentions behind its design, and looking for potential negative effects. And then, of course, there's protecting teachers' rights, making sure they're not left behind as AI changes the landscape of education. As certain tasks get automated, their role shifts, and the framework is really trying to support that transition.
And they talk about, and this is interesting to me, trustworthy and environmentally sustainable AI. Like, why those two together?
Well, trustworthy AI means making sure the tools we use are reliable, validated, that they're actually doing what they're supposed to do, and that they're safe, right, for both teachers and students. And the environmental sustainability piece, well, it recognizes that AI requires a lot of computing power.
Oh, yeah.
It can be very energy intensive, so they're advocating for responsible practices there.
Makes sense.
And of course, they want this framework to be applicable to all teachers,
Right.
whether they're, tech wizards or just starting out.
Right.
They recognize that everyone is at a different level of digital expertise. So it's about a gradual, progressive approach, offering pathways for all teachers to grow their AI skills.
And speaking of growth, they're really big on lifelong professional learning.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, given how fast AI is evolving, it's essential. Teachers need to constantly be learning, adapting their practices, and reflecting on how AI is changing their work. And they need systems in place to support them throughout their careers.
Yeah. So a lot of very well thought out principles. But how is this framework actually structured? How does it translate into something concrete for teachers and policymakers?
We'll use this two-dimensional matrix. Think of it like a grid.
Mm-hmm.
On one side of the grid, you've got 5 key areas of competency.
Okay.
These are the things that teachers need to develop. And on the other side, you have 3 stages of progression.
Okay.
So showing how teachers can advance in each of those competencies over time.
All right. So 5 aspects, 3 levels. Let's start with those 5 aspects. What are the core areas of AI expertise that they've identified?
Well, first, you've got the human-centered mindset. This is all about the values and attitudes that teachers need when they're working with AI. It's about keeping human rights and well-being at the forefront.
So it's not just about understanding the technology. It's about understanding the human context.
Exactly. And then, of course, there's the ethics of AI.
Right.
All those essential ethical principles and guidelines that teachers need to know and apply. Things like data privacy, bias, accountability. It's about using AI responsibly.
Given all the potential ethical dilemmas around AI, yeah, that's huge.
Absolutely. And then we've got AI foundations and applications.
Okay.
This is about teachers having a conceptual understanding of AI,
Okay.
how it works, different types of AI, and also the practical skills to actually use those AI tools in their teaching.
So it's both the theory and the practice.
Yeah. Knowing how to select the right tools for the job, knowing how to adapt them, and also being aware of the limitations of AI.
Right. What it can do and what it can't do.
Exactly. Then there's AI pedagogy. This is all about integrating AI into teaching practices in a meaningful way. It's about knowing when and how to use AI tools to enhance learning experiences.
Right. It's not about using AI for AI's sake. Right. It's about using it to support good teaching.
Exactly. It's got to be purposeful.
Yeah.
And then lastly, we've got AI for professional development. This is about teachers using AI to enhance their own learning, for professional growth, for collaboration, for staying up to date on the latest research and best practices.
Okay, so those are the 5 key aspects. Now, you mentioned these 3 progression levels. How do those play into this? Like, how do they represent a teacher's journey in these areas?
Well, they're meant to show how a teacher can develop across these 5 competency areas. So the first level is acquire. This is the foundational level where teachers are building that basic AI literacy. They're learning how to evaluate AI tools and use them appropriately.
So it's about getting that baseline understanding.
Right. And then you move up to deepen.
Okay.
This is where they're developing more intermediate skills. They're starting to think about how to design really meaningful pedagogical strategies that incorporate AI. They're moving beyond just using the tools, you know?
Yeah. They're thinking more intentionally about AI's role in their teaching.
Exactly. And then the final level is create. This is the advanced level where teachers are really pushing the boundaries. They're customizing AI tools, they're innovating, they're even developing new ways of using AI in education.
So it's not just about using what's out there, it's about shaping the future of AI in education.
Exactly. They're becoming leaders in the field.
It's really interesting how all of this comes together. The aspects, the levels,
Yeah.
they all intersect.
Yeah, it creates this, I guess, matrix of competency. And the report really emphasizes that these 5 aspects are interconnected. They don't exist in isolation. So, for example, a teacher's understanding of AI ethics will directly influence how they use AI in their teaching. And importantly, a teacher's progress across these aspects, it might not be perfectly linear. Someone might be very advanced in, say, understanding AI technology, but still developing their awareness of the ethical implications. You know, it's a nuanced picture of growth.
Everyone's going to have their strengths and areas they need to focus on more.
Exactly.
So let's get into some concrete examples. What would it look like for a teacher to be at the acquirer level in each of these 5 aspects? Let's
Yeah.
start with human-centered mindset.
Okay, so at the acquire level for human-centered mindset, a teacher would have this basic understanding that AI, it's not magic.
Right.
It's created by people, and the decisions those creators make can have a big impact on our lives. They would be starting to think critically about, where does human agency come into play
Okay.
when we're using AI in our work?
So it's that initial awareness of the human element behind the technology.
Right.
What about ethics of AI at the acquire level?
Okay, so here a teacher would have, I guess, a basic grasp of the ethical issues around AI.
Okay.
Things like student data privacy, potential biases, the need for fairness, and environmental responsibility.
Right. So just that foundational knowledge of what the ethical considerations are.
Exactly.
And how about AI foundations and applications?
Right. So at this level, a teacher would know basically what AI technology is, how those AI models actually learn from data, and they'd be able to use some validated AI tools for common tasks, things like, generating different text formats or summarizing information, basic stuff.
Okay. So they're able to recognize AI and use it for some basic purposes.
Right.
What about AI pedagogy at the acquire level?
So here, a teacher would be starting to see how AI tools could be useful in their lesson planning
Okay.
or in how they assess their students. They'd be exploring how AI might help them achieve their teaching goals,
Okay.
but still at a pretty basic level.
Right. And then finally, AI for professional development. What does that look like at the acquire level?
So at this stage, they're just starting to explore how AI tools could help them with their own professional learning.
Right.
Maybe using AI-powered resources to find relevant articles or connect with other educators, just dipping their toes in the water.
Okay, so that's acquire. It gives us a good picture of what that foundational level looks like. Now let's move on to deepen.
Right.
How do those same 5 aspects look when a teacher has developed those intermediate skills? Starting again with human-centered mindset.
Okay, so at the deepen level, they've got a more sophisticated understanding of human accountability. When it comes to AI in education, they can really critically analyze claims about AI replacing human judgment. They're not just taking things at face value.
So it's a more nuanced and critical perspective.
Yeah, they're thinking deeply about AI's role.
What about ethics of AI at this deepen level?
So here they've internalized those essential ethical rules, about data privacy, intellectual property, and they're actively using those principles when they're evaluating AI tools. It's not just head knowledge anymore. It's informing their practice.
Right. They're not just aware of the rules, they're actually applying them.
Exactly.
How about AI foundations and applications?
So now they're proficient in actually using the AI tools that their schools are using. They've got a deeper understanding of the different categories of AI technology, how data and algorithms work.
And they're much more confident in selecting the right tools for different tasks.
So they've really leveled up in terms of their comfort and knowledge with AI.
Yeah. And when it comes to AI pedagogy, they're really good at integrating AI into those student-centered teaching practices.
Yeah.
They're using it to engage students, personalize learning, and strengthen those interactions between teachers and students.
So they're actually improving their teaching with AI. They're not just using it because it's there.
Exactly. It's about enhancing their practice.
And then how about AI for professional development at the deepen level?
So now they're confidently using AI tools to participate in those professional learning communities.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe collaborating on projects, sharing resources, giving each other feedback, and staying up to date on research.
Okay.
They're really leveraging AI for their own growth.
Right. Okay, and then we come to that final level. Create. This is the top tier. What does it look like for each of the 5 aspects at this level? Let's start again with human-centered mindset. Okay, so now we're talking about teachers who are really active in shaping how we use AI as a society. They understand the broader implications, the potential impact on our values and norms, and they're advocating for AI to be used in a way that benefits humanity.
Wow. So they're not just users of AI, they're shapers of the AI landscape.
Exactly. They're thought leaders. And when it comes to the ethics of AI, they're not just following the rules, they're helping to create them.
Mhm.
They're leading discussions, they're advocating for ethical practices. They might even be involved in developing guidelines and standards for AI in education.
Right.
They're really pushing the field forward.
And what about AI foundations and applications at this create level?
Well, now they're able to actually customize or modify AI tools
Wow.
to meet specific needs.
Mhm.
They're applying their advanced knowledge and skills to design AI-assisted learning environments to solve really specific problems.
So they're becoming creators and innovators with AI.
Yeah. And they're not just tinkering, they're really tackling some of the big challenges in education.
What about AI pedagogy? I mean, what does that look like at this create level?
Well, at this point, they're able to really critically assess the long-term impact of AI.
Okay.
They're designing those AI immersive learning experiences, and they're constantly experimenting. They're using data to inform their innovations.
So they're at the cutting edge of pedagogy.
Yeah, they're pioneers.
And then finally, AI for professional development at the create level.
So they're not just using AI tools for their own learning, they're actually modifying those tools to better meet their needs
Okay.
and the needs of their colleagues. And they're constantly sharing what they're learning. They're helping to build the capacity of the whole educational community.
It's really amazing to see this progression, right? Like how a teacher can really grow and evolve with AI.
Yeah, it's a pretty exciting trajectory.
But the report doesn't just define these competencies. They actually offer some strategies for how to put this framework into practice.
Right. It's not just a theoretical document. It's meant to be actionable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what are some of the key implementation strategies that they suggest?
Well, one of the first things they talk about is regulation.
Okay.
Making sure that only trustworthy AI tools are used in education. They argue that we need mechanisms in place to validate those tools, to make sure they're safe, they're reliable, they're doing what they're supposed to do.
Right. So it's about creating a safe and trusted environment for AI.
Exactly. And they actually point to the EU AI Act as a good example of a risk-based regulatory approach.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's about setting some ground rules. And then they talk about policies and conditions that support AI in education.
Okay.
Things like, conducting cost-benefit analyses before you roll out AI widely, developing strategies to encourage teachers to use AI effectively, addressing equity issues, making sure everyone has access to the tools and the infrastructure they need.
So they recognize that it's not just about providing the framework, it's about creating the right conditions for it to succeed.
Right. And they also stress the importance of local adaptation. They want countries and institutions to develop their own local AI competency frameworks based on the UNESCO framework, but tailored to their specific contexts. Because, different countries have different educational systems, different levels of digital readiness.
Right. It's a starting point, not a one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly. And then, of course, training and support for teachers is a huge part of this.
Yeah.
They recommend designing really comprehensive training programs that span teachers' entire careers. So starting with pre-service teacher education and then continuing with in-service professional development. They even point to some examples of, programs that are doing this well, like the EU's AI4T MOOC
Okay.
and initiatives in Korea. So it's about continuous learning and support.
And then how do they suggest we assess teachers' progress in these competencies? Like, how do we know they're actually developing the skills and knowledge they need?
Well, they recommend developing assessments that are practical
Okay.
and relevant to the teaching context.
Hmm.
Not just testing theoretical knowledge, but actually looking at how teachers are applying what they've learned.
Okay.
They even give an example in the report of how you could take a learning outcome from the framework and translate it into a concrete assessment.
So it's about really measuring what teachers can do with AI.
Exactly. Not just what they know,
Right.
but how they can use AI to actually benefit their students.
Well, this has been an incredibly insightful deep dive.
Yeah, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most important takeaway for someone who's been listening to all of this?
Well, I think the key message is that this UNESCO framework, it's a really valuable roadmap. It's a guide for how we can navigate this rapidly changing world of AI in education. And it's all about doing it in a way that's ethical, that's human-centered, that really puts the well-being of teachers and students at the forefront.
And it sounds like this framework, it's not meant to be static. It's going to keep evolving.
Oh, absolutely. UNESCO is very clear that this is a master framework that needs to be adapted and refined as AI technology changes. And they're really urging member states to get on board, to develop their own national frameworks and teacher training programs based on this guidance. It's a call to action
Right.
to really be proactive.
So to our listener out there, as you reflect on all of this, think about the implications for your own relationship with learning. How do you see the role of educators changing in this age of AI? How do we strike that balance between technology and human connection in the classroom? These are the big questions we need to be grappling with. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.